Number 10. Bravo-class submarine. There are several different names for the 4 Soviet-built Project 960 Kafal-class military submarines. These vessels were built between 1967 and 1970. NATO calls them Bravo-class submarines, and they're also known as Mullet-class vessels. They were designed for use in anti-submarine warfare training exercises, and were also combat-worthy. The Soviet military certainly got good use out of the submarines, which were kept in service for nearly 40 years before they were decommissioned during the 90s. Each diesel-electric powered vehicle was nearly 240 feet long and 32 feet wide. Bravo-class submarines were a lot smaller than the 574-foot-long Typhoon-class subs that the Soviet Union developed less than a decade later in 1976. The only surviving Bravo-class vessel, officially named SS-310, sits at a shipyard in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson. It was moved there after being decommissioned in 1997 and sold to a private owner who reportedly planned to display the submarine in a museum. But that never happened, and the Cold War relic was left to deteriorate at its current location. Decades of neglect have taken a toll on the now rusting SS-310, which continues to languish in the water with no apparent future plans. Number 9. McBarge. The Friendship 500, better known as the McBarge, is most famous for its use as a floating McDonald's restaurant for the 1986 World Exposition on Transportation and Communication in Vancouver, British Columbia. Believe it or not, it was the world's first floating McDonald's. The distinction goes to another boat, which served up the classy American cuisine along the Missouri River in St. Louis starting in 1980. It remained in business until 2000, and nobody knows what happened to the boat. But the 2 floating fast food joints were much different from one another. Unlike other McDonald's restaurants, the McBarge kept its kitchen hidden. Customers' orders were delivered at the front counter of a conveyor belt, adding a futuristic touch to the unique fast food joint. The restaurant's glory days were short-lived. After the expo ended, the McBarge shuttered its doors, never to reopen. It failed to find a permanent home, and the situation worsened in 1991 when the new owners of the site where the boat was moored asked its owners to move it. They relocated the vessel to nearby Burrard Inlet, where it sat, forgotten, for the next decade. Memories of the McBarge resurfaced after its appearance in the 2004 film Blade: Trinity. Things seemed to take a badly needed positive turn in 2010 when developers Howard and Kaylee McKean bought the barge. The couple originally planned to repurpose the derelict boat as a deep-sea museum dedicated to the history of the Pacific Ocean. They even had a name picked out, the Deep Discovery Center, but the project seems to be slow going, if it's still in the plans at all. Nobody has updated the McBarge's official Twitter account since 2017, and as of 2019, the Meekin's vision of converting it into a museum have yet to come into fruition. Its future remains uncertain for now. Number 8. Mi6 Chopper. During an oil prospecting expedition in 1981, an Mi6 helicopter stopped to refuel at the Kalimpur base in Russia's Yamalo-Nenets region, roughly 1,500 miles outside Moscow. Just 5 minutes after it took off, the aircraft's engines failed, forcing its pilot to crash land into a swamp. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the chopper was severely damaged. An investigation revealed that workers at the base had accidentally filled the fuel tanks with a mixture of gas and water, which is what killed the engines. Over 40 years later, the wreck is still sitting in the swamp, and as far as anyone knows, there are no plans to remove it. The MIL Mi6 was a heavy transport helicopter that was built for both military and civilian use. It was first built in 1959 and was the largest helicopter in production until it was superseded by the MIL Mi-26 in 1980. The colossal chopper is normally flown by a flight crew consisting of at least 5 members and can seat up to 65 armed troops. It can also carry vehicles and other large bulky loads of equipment. Over 900 Mi-6s were built before the model was retired in 2002. Number 7. World War I German U-Boat. On the bank of the River Medway in Kent, England, there's a World War I era German U-boat that has sat for over a century. It's believed to be one of over 100 U-boats that surrendered when the conflict ended. Most were scrapped, while others were given to the French Navy, but nobody knows how or why the lone wrecked submarine ended up where it is. Experts have tentatively identified it as U-Boat UB-122, which was among the surrendering group. It's possible that the tow line pulling the boat broke during a storm, making it more trouble than it was worth to chase down. UB-122 is the only complete U-boat ever found in British tidal waters, according to marine archaeologist Mark Dunkley, who spoke with Mail Online. But there are no plans to preserve it. Instead, it'll be left in place as a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice that comes with war. Out of 40 known U-boat wrecks in British waters, it is the only one that can be seen. Its visibility changes with the water levels, and it's gained a lot of attention in recent years after a series of harsh storms exposed most of the vehicle. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any videos like these. Number 6. Rolangi PB1600. Police in Myanmar were baffled when local fishermen spotted a nearby 600-foot-long ghost ship in the Gulf of the Martaban in 2018. It ran aground a few days later, enabling authorities to board and investigate. They quickly noticed the absence of both cargo and crew, and that the ship was rusting and old. It flew an Indonesian flag, and its name, Rolangi PB1600, was painted on its side. These were the only signs of the vessel's origins. 2 cables attached to the ship's head revealed that it was being towed before it broke free and went adrift. The marine traffic website provided a few additional clues. The Rolangi was built in 2001, and its last recorded location was off of the Taiwanese coast in 2009. Using radar, the Navy located a tugboat 50 miles from the coast and questioned the 13 Indonesian sailors aboard. They explained that they were recently towing the ship to a scrapyard in Bangladesh when they encountered a heavy storm, which caused the towing cables to break. Instead of trying to get the Rolangi to its destination, they simply cut their losses and abandoned it at sea. Number 5. Vintage sports car graveyard. Most vintage car enthusiasts would probably think that it's downright crazy to leave a classic Jaguar, Rolls-Royce, Porsche, Benz, or BMW sitting outside, exposed to the elements for an extended period of time. But that's exactly what one car dealer and former racer named Michael Froelich did. In fact, he specializes in restoring classic cars, despite the collection of 50 decaying automobiles that he deliberately placed outdoors on his property near Mettmann, Germany. Froelich traveled the world in search of the rare vintage vehicles, tracking each and every one down personally. He considers the display, which he calls Auto Sculpturen Park, to be a museum of sorts. All the cars are from the year 1950, which is when the eccentric old-timer was born, and they were all parked at the site in the year 2000, when Froelich turned 50 years old. In a 2009 interview with the German magazine Der Spiegel, he described the cars as his brothers. He also revealed that many of them were roadworthy when they were parked on his land, but all it takes is one look to realize that this is no longer the case for any of the cars. What looks like a rotting exhibit and a waste of perfectly good, valuable vintage vehicles is, in Froelich's eyes, an expressive work of art. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Number 4. Out-of-place airliner. Northwest of Chicago, there's an old commercial airliner sitting in the forest. The small white jet, which has a series of 3 orange and reddish lines running across its body, is a British Aircraft Corporation BAC-111. It was built in 1965, according to Plane Lodger. In 1977, it flew for Pacific American Airlines. The plane went into storage in 1998 while under the ownership of Roddick Industries. While the YouTuber failed to disclose its final resting place, local radio station 100.9 The Eagle speculated that the aircraft is in Gilbert's or Elmhurst, Illinois. It looks as though its wings were cut off to simplify its journey to the woods, but the story behind why and how it ended up there is largely a mystery. The BAC-111 was a solid model that remained in use among major airlines into the 1990s. After that, many airlines in the Far East and Africa bought the retired vehicles, but the 111 is no longer certifiable as airworthy in most countries, as the last flyable one was taken out of service in 2019. Number 3. Overland Train Mark II. During the 1950s, the U.S. government decided that it would be a good idea to develop a massive off-road land train that was capable of hauling heavy loads of cargo over challenging terrain. It commissioned the Texas-based heavy equipment company Letourneau for the job, which was meant to help with lodging in the remote wilderness. Letourneau was tasked with building 3 land trains, the largest among them, known as the TC-497 Overland Train Mark II, measured 472 feet long. It was the largest off-road vehicle ever built. The train contained 4 large engines with a total of 4,680 horsepower, Fully loaded, it was capable of covering a distance of somewhere between 350 and 450 miles. Its 30-foot-tall, 6-wheeled cabin consisted of bathrooms, a kitchen, and sleeping quarters for up to 6 people. The Army began testing the Mark II in 1962. It performed well, but the gargantuan vehicle was slow, traveling at just 20 miles per hour on average. In addition to its speed challenges, the Mark II was rendered obsolete as heavy-duty cargo helicopters started rolling off the production line. The product was abandoned, and the experimental vehicle was never used again. Most of it was sold for scrap, but the control cab remained on display at the Yuma Proving Ground in Arizona. Number 2. TSS Duke of Lancaster. Built in 1956 at the Harland and Wolff Shipyard in Belfast, Ireland, the TSS Duke of Lancaster was a British passenger ferry and cruise ship. It spent its career shuttling passengers back and forth between Lancashire, England, and Northern Ireland. The ship also traveled to numerous leisure destinations, including the Scottish Islands, Belgium, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, and Spain. Cruise services ended during the mid-1960s, when the Duke of Lancaster was converted into a car ferry as a way to keep up with competition. When renovations were complete, the vessel had a carrying capacity of up to 1,200 passengers and 105 vehicles. In 1979, it was sold to a company based in North Wales. Its new owner planned to turn it into a floating arcade called the Fun Ship. The leisure center had a good run, but it closed in 2004 due to ongoing legal battles with its local council. Subsequent owners faced similar problems, which caused them to walk away from any plans they had to revive the Duke of Lancaster. The ship has languished in the same spot for more than 4 decades now. It's badly rusted and deteriorating, and has become more of an eyesore than it would probably be as an operating business. The games left behind from its days as an arcade were cleared out in 2012. Around the same time, graffiti artists were invited to make their mark on the Duke of Lancaster by adding their own personal touches to the outside. After all, the sight of graffiti beats having to look at a dilapidated, crumbling ship. But the artwork was soon covered over, and there seems to be no future plans for the vessel, leaving one to wonder how long it will sit in decay for before it's either removed from the site or something useful is done with it. And number 1. Eagle Lake and West Branch locomotives. Northern Maine was once the home of a thriving logging industry. Some remnants of this bygone era are still visible in the region's forests, where you'll find 2 rusting steam-powered locomotives and a collection of old machinery parts. At first glance, the site might resemble a junkyard, but the equipment is left over from its glory days, when it was used for shuttling timber, a vital commodity, through the forest. The locomotives entered service in 1926, when Northern Maine was a major logging hub. They ran day and night to keep up with the industry's demand, stopping for just 10 minutes between loads. But the tramway's golden era was short-lived, and after carrying nearly 1 million cords of pulpwood, the Great Depression shut it down. The 2 locomotives were soon rendered obsolete, and would have cost more to move them out of the forest than it was to simply leave them there. They were parked at Eagle Lake, and therefore forgotten about until they began drawing urban explorers. Even though they were deserted and left to rot, the trains are still maintained today. In 1996, one of the locomotives began leaning hard to one side. Volunteers and government workers worked together to jack it up, restore the track beneath it, and set the train back down to its resting place. The project took 3 years and 5,200 5-gallon buckets of crushed stone, which were carried to the site during the brutal winter cold. Thanks for watching. Which of these abandoned vehicles do you wish you found? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.